Those were the headlines. Stay with us as we delve into each story in greater detail after a brief pause. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he planned contact with Germany, France and Italy to discuss progress towards peace. Zelensky said he planned to discuss a ceasefire, a leaders' summit and long-term security following a meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Ghana's Defence Minister Edward Omani Bohama died in a military helicopter crash along with 4 other officials and 3 Air Force crew. Julius Deborah, President John Mahama's Chief of Staff, said that the crash in which Bama Environment, Science and Technology Minister Ibrahim Mutla Mohammed and others were killed was a national tragedy. The President and Government extend our condolences and sympathies to the families of our comrades and the servicemen who died in service to the country. US President Donald Trump's administration has instructed US diplomats in Europe to launch a lobbying campaign to build an opposition to the European Union's Digital Services Act, which Washington says stifles free speech and imposes costs on US tech companies. In a State Department cable dated August 4th that was signed by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the agency said the EU was pursuing undue restrictions on freedom of expression by its efforts to combat hateful speech, misinformation and disinformation, and the DSA was further enhancing these curbs. US President Donald Trump's higher tariff rates of 10% to 50% on dozens of trading partners kicked in on Thursday, testing his strategy for shrinking US trade deficits without massive disruptions to global supply chains, higher inflation, and stiff retaliation from trading partners. US Customs and Border Protection Agency began collecting the higher tariffs after weeks of suspense over Trump's final tariff rates and frantic negotiations with major trading partners that sought to lower them. President Donald Trump also said the United States will impose a tariff of about 100% on imports of semiconductors, but offered up a big exemption. It will not apply to companies that are manufacturing in the US or have committed to do so. US President Donald Trump could meet Russian President Vladimir Putin as soon as next week, a White House official said. Donald Trump said there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said the Russians expressed their desire to meet with President Trump, and the president is open to meeting with both President Putin and President Zelensky. The diplomatic maneuvers come 2 days before a deadline set by Trump for Russia to agree to peace in Ukraine or face new sanctions. South Korea and the United States will conduct major joint military drills starting on August 18th, officials said, although they will delay parts of the annual exercises that have been a source of tension with North Korea to later in the year. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff spokesperson Lee Sung-jung said the 11-day annual exercises, called Ulchi Freedom Shield, will be on a similar scale to 2024, but adjusted by rescheduling 20 out of 40 field training events to September. The Allies agreed to reschedule some parts of the drill to next month over factors including ensuring training conditions during extreme heat and maintaining a balanced combined defence posture year-round. As US tariffs on Brazilian goods jumped to 50%, Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said that he saw no room for direct talks now with US President Donald Trump that would likely be a humiliation. Brazil is not about to announce reciprocal tariffs, nor will his government give up on cabinet-level talks. Despite Brazil's exports facing one of the highest tariffs imposed by Trump, the US trade barriers look unlikely to derail Latin America's largest economy, giving Lula more room to stand his ground against Trump than most Western leaders. French President Emmanuel Macron has asked his government to tighten visa requirements on Algerian diplomats as the dispute about deportation of Algerian nationals escalates. Macron said the growing difficulties that France is encountering in terms of migration and security with Algeria required a tougher stance against the former French colony. Macron requested that Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot officially notify Algeria of the suspension of a 2013 agreement that exempted diplomatic and official passport holders from visa requirements. France must be strong and command respect. It can only receive this from its partners if it shows them the respect it demands from them. The basic rule also applies to Algeria. South Korea's special prosecutor appointed to investigate former First Lady Kim Kyung-hee over corruption charges submitted on Thursday a request to the court to issue a warrant to detain her, the prosecution team said. Kim and ex-President Yoon Suk-yeol are being investigated by two separate special prosecutors appointed after the former leader was ousted in April over his brief declaration of martial law. Indian rescuers used helicopters to pluck to safety people stranded by floodwaters in the Himalayan state of Uttarakhand nearly 2 days after a sudden inundation and landslide kills 4, with dozens still missing. Roads crumpled or blocked by boulders kept rescue teams from reaching the village of Darali in the state's district of Uttarakhand, a tourist spot, after a wall of water hit the area, submerging homes and cars in sludge. The state's chief minister, Pushkar Singh Adami, said the helicopter rescuers were given instructions needed to ensure the operation was effective. Australia's affordable housing push has arrived in the wealthy Sydney suburb of Mosman, where new planning laws now challenge long-standing resistance to development in the leafy area known for mansions and sweeping harbour views. State authorities in Sydney and Melbourne, Australia's two biggest cities, are stripping some planning powers from suburban councils, including ones like Mosman, that have created national headlines over opposition to new housing from older, wealthier constituents. The broad policy shift comes as political deference to NIMBY sentiment gives way to demands for more housing from younger voters, whose electoral heft now rivals the traditionally powerful baby boomer bloc. Hello and welcome to the Ocean News. My name is Rory and I am live from London studio. We bring you the latest developments from around the globe, alongside in-depth coverage of the stories. Let's dive right into the headlines.